The Birth Circle podcast features experts in all the nuanced areas of pregnancy, birth, and postpartum with the aim of helping women make the choices that will keep them safe, healthy, and empowered. We respect all birth choices and believe in supporting informed consent and evidence-based practices. Nothing said on this podcast should be taken as medical advice. You should always seek the advice of a competent professional for your care. Welcome to the Birth Circle podcast.
This is Sarah with Birth Circle, and today I'm excited to talk about doulas and business with Patty Brennan. And Patty is the owner and visionary force behind Lifespan Doulas. That's a doula training and certification agency offering online birth, postpartum, and end-of-life doula training and a doula business development support. For 40 years, she's been a doula, midwife, educator, author, nonprofit executive, and successful entrepreneur. And all the things. Patty has personally trained over 2,000 people to become doulas. And as the founder and executive director of two community-based nonprofit doula programs in Michigan, Patty has helped make doulas widely available in her home state, especially for low-income families. She's also the author of the Doula Business Guide, How to Create a Successful Birth, Postpartum, and End-of-Life Doula Business, and the Doula Business Guide Workbook, both in their third editions. So I feel like I found the source, the best person to talk on this subject.
Well, I'm certainly a person to talk to on this. I've given a lot of thought to sustainability for the doula profession.
Yeah, and I've said this, in conversation that the only way we can have any change in this industry, the only way we end up empowering moms in their births is if we keep doulas in business. It's, moms need all the information, moms need the support, but who does that information and support? It's the doulas. And if they're cycling in and out too fast, they never really get traction, then we have an industry that's not mature enough to really make lasting change, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
And I think the quality that maybe is missing, that some folks are missing, well, part of it might be missing the guidance that they need for how to be a businesswoman, because what really lights their fire is to support moms and babies and families and partners. So they're focused on that and not so much on what it would take to run a business or set that up. So it's just sort of maybe a lack of knowledge. But then even when people begin to embrace that process a little bit, I think the missing quality is persistence sometimes, because the startup place for doulas is very, it's very lonely at the beginning.
It really
so you
is.
take training and you're involved in this sense of community and excitement with the other people that you're training with, and everybody's, got a fire in their belly when they leave the training. And then they go home and they're in their own head and, kind of trying to create something from nothing, and nobody knows who they are, what they're doing. And so it's a sort of a lonely place to be in the beginning.
Wow.
And it gets easier if you can persist through that. And there's also like kind of maybe a sense of it being daunting, because there's so many moving parts to setting up a business and running a business and learning to be good at that, mastering new skills, all of that. So it's challenging and kind of overwhelming, I think, initially. So people really do need, I think, a little hand-holding, a friend, whether it's a good book that's helping them, guiding them through it, or however they learn best, like in community with other people, or online training, but whatever it is, some sort of more systematic way of approaching it and being able to chart progress and seeing that you're making progress. But I often think of it as sort of like this upside down triangle at the beginning, and you're at the very point of the bottom side of that, in that lonely place. But as you serve more families and you reach out to more people, you're not only serving those families who may become like repeat customers in the future for you, you're connecting with all of their contact people. You're being exposed to their social networks, to their family members who may also be present at the birth, or their sisters, their cousins, their friends, And so the more people you serve, the easier it is for word to spread about you. And you just have to sort of persist through that lonely startup place.
Yeah, and we're going to go into that lonely startup place of, how to get major traction. First, I want to know how you got into this birth world in the first place. What was your introduction? I mean, 40 years is a long time. I mean, were women even having babies that long ago? I'm just kidding. I'm 40.
Yes, we were. Let's see. So yeah, I came to it in 1983, was sort of my beginning. And the thing is, I wasn't like really young at the time. I was I think I just turned 30. I'd had my first son, and I was very clueless about that process. I didn't read any books. I didn't have any support. I just, but I'd had the really good attitude of like, well, I have a woman's body, and
I'll figure it out.
Probably knows how to have a baby. So my mother had 5. So I had like a positive gut, I think, self-image around it, which I find missing in a lot of today's culture, like the women in this generation. But anyway, and then I met a home birth midwife. So it's sort of out of the clue. But prior to that point in my life, I had never worked any job more than 10 months. I say now, it's like, I don't do bosses. So I think it was part of my personality was that I just didn't really like working for other people. And then after my son was born, I became self-employed. So I started my own small business, home-based business. Had nothing to do with birth. But I kind of grew that over the few years of when he was little, and it was it was paying the groceries as I sort of started dipping my feet into birth work. And that really came through meeting a midwife who lived in my neighborhood. I just happened to strike up her son jumped in my son's sandbox. And that was the beginning of my career in birth, because from the day I met her, I was just like, that's really, 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 really interesting.
Yeah. Well, and then midwives in the 80s.
Wait a minute, you're what? You do what? And then I just started borrowing books from her library, and basically I think became kind of a pest in her life, because I'm like, I want to be you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the midwives of the 80s were pretty cool ladies. And sometimes I have to remind my contemporaries that a lot of the lovely things we enjoy in our birth industry, I mean, some states are easier than others, but really in general, all of the beautiful things we enjoy are thanks to those fiery 1980s midwives, the ones that were willing to go to jail.
I agree. And I was very impressed by that. I like the sort of, I think suited my personality, the sort of countercultural aspect of it, going outside the system and all of that. And it was the cusp of the return of home birth midwifery. Is kind of right when I was coming into that. And so I found the whole thing very exciting. And so that was the beginning. And then from there, I went on to become a childbirth educator. Just happened to be like a little serendipitous thing that happened. And I took a training and a job was offered to me. And it actually ended up being a very consistent part of what I did for the rest of my career was, doing some form of adult education around birth and postpartum. That just took off, and it became part, a very consistent part of what I did, while all these other things sort of came and went, being a birth doula, being a home birth midwife, being postpartum doula, end of life work, starting these nonprofit organizations for volunteer doula programs. So there was like my focus at any given time for a 7 or 10 year period, might have been, it changed, but there was always education was part of it.
Yeah. Very, very cool. Okay. So tell me, when you start being a birth doula, what are some of the business models you can start with? How do you just jump in? I mean, you mentioned you go to the training, you're surrounded by all these exciting other doulas, like a sisterhood, and the community is really, you feel very welcome and strong, and then you leave, you go back home, and you're alone in your head. So how do you start? How do you get your business model? How do you get off the ground as a doula?
So some folks, and I know this is kind of controversial, because a lot of people really don't believe that doulas should do any volunteer work at all. So there's definitely like a train, a wing, I would say, a group of people who feel very strongly that doulas should never offer discounted services, or that if one doula decides to volunteer her services for a family, that somehow lowers the value of doulas for everybody. I don't believe that. I don't buy into that mindset that it's bad if somebody else wants to volunteer and that's going to affect my ability to earn. So I would encourage new doulas to get to births any way that they can. So if it's family members, sisters, or even volunteering in their community, and it may not be, they may be able to just right away have some people lined up that they're going to charge fees for services and just jump in with both feet. But rather than sit around for 2 hours and let all of your passion go down the drain, I would say, start trying to get to some births. And some people find that they can do that by volunteering or helping like a family that maybe really could use some help, or teen moms, or, whatever you want to do. Some people work through like a faith community that they're a member of and maybe help somebody out. But there are ways to get to births. Right?
Yeah. Oh,
so
yeah.
To start doing that, sooner, it will help people who are inexperienced, especially maybe some of those doulas who haven't had children themselves, just feel more confident in presenting and claiming that title doula, like in saying without hesitation or apology, like, I'm a birth doula. And to believe it and to own that identity, and then just try to do your best for people, wherever you are in your knowledge and experience level. Like, of course you'll get better if after 10 years, but
yep,
you have something to offer somebody right now.
Right. That's what I say too, right out of the gate, right out of your training. And that's, I think, what the people that don't want doulas to discount or do anything for free, they say, once you're trained, and it's not, I've told people that the only difference between now and right after my training in terms of how I am at births is I don't cry at the actual birth anymore. I've seen enough births that I don't cry. But as far as the skill, no, I'm very skilled, and maybe I'm a little bit more attuned when I see somebody else in the room that needs something, or like how I could better serve the family, but not that much more than when I first was trained. So
yeah. So when I felt ready to give up the on-call lifestyle, then part of that was because I just didn't want to, to keep being on call and living that lifestyle. But I didn't want to, I was kind of burned out. So at the very end, I kind of recognized, like, this woman would call me in labor at 1 a.m. And at one point I like literally cried. I literally burst into tears when I hung up the phone, because I didn't want to be doing this.
Yeah. The on-call life is hard.
Okay. I would rather have a completely inexperienced doula at my birth who felt like it was the greatest privilege and honor of her life to be there and to give me her all and be all in, focused and wanting to be there. I would rather have that person at my birth than me when I was burned out at the very end of my career of doing that. Right?
Yeah, that's a great point.
So to me, it's about the energy you bring to the birth, and it's your personality and who you are. And that's what the parents and the couple that are hiring you are attracted to. That's what they want. They want, they want your energy. They want you. You could have been to 200 births, but if they don't click with you, they're not going to hire you. So experience isn't everything. And I think newly trained doulas do themselves a disservice when they focus on the negative side of things, when they focus on that part of themselves, or they're like, this little negative voice that we all have in our head that tells us, you're not good enough, you're not experienced enough, you don't know enough, the sort of Debbie Downer voice, in our heads that tells us negative things, instead of saying, really focusing on what we can do for that person and what we want to do and what we do bring to the table. So it's really an attitude to focus on your strengths and your heart and what you can do, as opposed to what you think your deficiencies are. Everybody has deficiencies.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody does, for sure. But you bring a great point. You'd rather have a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, brand new doula than somebody who's at the end of their career and it doesn't really matter to them. Your birth is not.
Like, oh yeah, another birth today. Oh my God, I'm so tired. Like
Yeah. And
as
also
opposed,
just as a doula, knowing when that point is going to get, so you can avoid, going to
yeah, the
complete
day that
burnout.
I did that, it held up a real mirror to me. I was like, my clients deserve better than this.
Yeah.
Like it's time for me to bow, okay, like this is a sign. And I
Yeah.
didn't carry it past that because I really knew that, that I felt done with it.
Yep.
So
So the traditional doula model is you get a client to hire you, you're on call, you show up for the birth. Well, you get paid and then you show up for the birth. Are there any other more creative models that you've seen doulas, like payment structures or anything? I know it's kind of a hard question, but that could avoid burnout or that could just creative.
yeah, that was, I think, one of the most noticeable things when I was preparing to write the third edition of my book, The Doula Business Guide. So the first edition came out in 2010 and, kind of put things together for that time. 4 years later, I felt like, oh, we need a second edition. There's been a lot of changes in the doula world. And then the same thing. So that was 2014 for the second edition, and then 2019. Well, then I felt like things had really changed by 20, especially even just in 5 years. So I did a lot of interviews of different doulas and some people who were agency owners who owned doula agencies, some people who were in collective models, some people who were in partnerships, some people in solo practice in both the US and Canada. So I did a lot of interviewing for that, for this third edition. And one of the things that really jumped out at me was how creative doulas had gotten with sustainability. So I think that this is, it's a really important question that you're asking, Sarah. And I think it's been on doulas' minds, like increasingly people are saying, okay, I really love doing this, but how can I make it sustainable? Or how can I do this on-call lifestyle without it, burning me out completely or being too hard on my family or friend, my social life or whatever it is. So people can, and so some of the models, so I don't think there's necessarily a right fit for everybody. I think everybody's a little bit different. Some people are going to be happiest as solo practitioners and just working with backup doulas, that they have like a pool maybe of backup doulas that they've cultivated who will have their back when you need it. Other people are going into full out partnership mode. So in that model, you can really switch off like responsibility. There's times when you're just off call, or you don't have to, depending on how busy your practice is, you might still get called in if you had 2 women in labor at the same time. But generally, like in a partnership, the idea would be that you have built-in backup there, to definitely have times where the client knows from the beginning, like I'm going to get one or the other of these 2 people, or one or the other of these 3 people in a partnership. Now, there's a lot of challenges to that model, and I've detailed those pretty extensively in my book. Why partnerships are hard.
Why are they hard?
I guess the bottom line is that everybody has to really feel, if you're going to be splitting the money equally 50-50, or you're splitting it 3 ways, however, like if you're doing a completely shared here's all of our income, here's the expenses against that income, and here's what's left over for us to pay ourselves at the end of the day, you have to really feel that everybody's carrying their weight, that everybody's putting in equal effort, and that you're splitting up of the money. And that it isn't just equal effort, it's also skill and result, like outcome. Like that everybody brings equal value. And that's a very hard thing to assess and for everyone to agree on.
Yeah. Yep. And then even if they agree on it, there could be a birth that throws everything off, or there's, people have bad days.
Yeah, and most people are really, that would be the benefit of working with other people. You could have a bad day. You could, say, my kid's sick. I think do you have my back can I take a break here? And then assuming that when I say yes to that as your partner, that the payoff is going to come back when I need it, right?
Right, definitely.
So, and that's fine. And if that's how it actually ends up working in real time, but if your partner ends up needing lots of help, because, oh, my husband, we're going through a divorce. So my mother's sick. And this happens. Life happens, right? So you're in a partnership and somebody's not carrying their weight for whatever reason. I mean, it could be that they're being lame, or it could be that they have a lot of personal crisis, whatever it is. And you have compassion for that. But at the bottom of and end of the day, if you're doing all the hard work and you're getting 50% of the money, you're not going to be happy in your partnership, and there's going to be a disconnect there. And so it's really hard. A successful partner, and the more people you add into that equation, the harder it gets.
Yeah, for sure. So then how does an agency work?
So the agency owner is they're basically like a solo act. I mean, they might have a partner. There might be two people that own the agency, and that's a different kind of thing. But from the doula working for the agency, I mean, you're a contract worker for them. And so they're doing all of the business side of things. I mean, if you're like, I don't really want to create a website, I don't want to figure out what
clients and
I don't want to sell myself. I don't want to, so they negotiate the client, they set the fees, they negotiate the client contracts, they do the marketing, they do the intake, they're doing everything. And then they're saying, hey, you're an approved doula, you're one of their stream of people that a contract worker that they might refer to. And they'll come and say, hey, Patty, do you want to work with this woman who's due such and such a date? She's got, and kind of lay out some of the parameters of first baby at such and such a hospital. And the contract doula can say yes or no.
So there's a lot of, I think some people think that if you don't have the relationship with the mother right from the start, that it makes for an awkward birth. So you're saying agency births, you basically get called in, much like an OB or somebody staff nursing, you get called into a birth, or maybe you have some prenatal experience with them, but ultimately you're working for the agency, not the mom directly. So
you are working for the agency owner. But and you're right. And then they might set it up like so. Some owners actually assign two birth. One owner I talked to assigned two birth doulas to every client. But my understanding is that there was an interview. It might have been. I'm trying to remember now.
Yeah, I mean, everybody can run it differently, but
but it might have been like a 2-stage interview process. So the maybe the owner did a quick interview to sort of see, like, answer a few questions. And then if the people were interested in pursuing, say, well, let me look and see who's available and see if I can find a good match for your needs.
Yeah, I was going to say that could be a major advantage of doing an agency, is that you can be matched. It's like a matchmaker. Exactly. They can see through you and what you need, and then match you with the best person instead of you having to go out and interview a bunch of different doulas. So there's some definite advantages I hadn't thought of.
Ideally. And from the doula's perspective, I mean, this should not be like, you could be building your own business. Theoretically, you could be sort of, all right, I'm thinking long term, I'm not going to work for a doula agency, but I need money now, and I want to get divorced right after training. If there's an agency in your area, maybe giving them a call and connecting with them. Now, there are some agency owners out there who are doing something that basically they shouldn't be doing. It's not actually legal, but they're calling people contract workers who are really their employees. Like, they're treating you like an employee, and they're having you sign a do not compete like clause in their contract with you. And they really can't do that because it's a definition, contract worker or employee. That's like an IRS definition.
Yep.
So there's categories. I mean, there's a whole checklist of stuff like, are you a contract worker or are you an employee? And if you're telling someone they can't have a competing other source of income, then they're actually
definitely an employee. And also, if you're telling them when to show up, and
so that's the main caveat, I would say. If you're looking, if you have a doula agency who's preventing you from taking your own clients, that's a problem. But they're all going to try to protect their interests, that you can't go sell your services to their clients separately and cut out the middleman of the agency owner, right? They're all going to have some kind of clause to protect themselves that would
honestly, if you've got a good agency, running a business is expensive. I tell my clients that it costs about 30% of the income, at least in taxes, but on top. So even up as high as half your income goes towards business expenses. And if that agency is taking care of it for you, then a 50% pay, and I put in quote, pay cut, You know, so say you're
Yeah.
charging the agency's charging the mom $2,000 and you're only getting 1,000 of it. And on the direct market, you could charge 2,000 as well, but then you've got 1,000 in expenses, taxes and stuff.
And all that work.
Right. And all
of-
the extra work of,
Right.
that business stuff. Then it's really a great deal if the model works for you. It's this, you get,
Yeah, it is. And a lot of people too, I find for me, like a lot of people come from doula training. It's not that they don't want to make it sustainable, but they might be using it as a stepping stone to another career like midwifery or is something in public health or social work or whatever. So a lot of people, it's not their endpoint, but they might hang out there for a while and
Yeah.
really, serve a lot of families and make a difference for families in a positive way for a few years. And this just makes more sense if they're like, no, I'm not gonna, I'm moving around, I'm still young, I'm still mobile, who knows what I'm going to do. Like they don't want to set up a whole business. Then, working for an agency makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, how do they get started? How do you start your doula career? I mean, you can technically just start taking births. You don't even need to be trained. There's no certifying agency or certifying body knows licensing.
Right?
I don't think doulas are licensed in any state.
Birth doulas are licensed in Oregon and Minnesota.
You have to be is it just a business license or do you actually have to be trained?
Well, no, I mean, so that means that the state has taken over, like said, oh, we're gonna regulate this profession. And the motive for doing that in those states, and a lot of other states have efforts towards that type of legislation right now, like Michigan does. Have an effort towards that, New York and many states, because basically what they want ultimately is for Medicaid to provide reimbursement for lower income families, for birth doula services. So that's happening right now in Oregon and Minnesota. But then the government's going to set the reimbursement rate.
I know I'm not a fan of that.
Yes,
I guess I'm okay. I'm okay with it. I doulas for low income families for sure. That if Medicaid could pay, that would be amazing. But why does it have to be a licensure, or could there be a two-way street? Like in Utah, you can choose to be licensed or you can choose not to as a midwife.
Well, and so that's the real question. It's like, are they outlawing people who are not licensed or discriminating against them? And I'm not quite sure exactly what the laws say in those states, but that's definitely the thing to be careful about. And that's what's happened with home birth midwifery, as different states have, began to license home birth midwives. They weren't licensed at all in Michigan when I was active in the 80s and 90s. And now recently there was legislation passed where in Michigan, the midwives are licensed. And, so yeah, it's literally against the law if you're not licensed through that system.
Yeah.
So yes, then it becomes,
messy.
And then they can start to dictate what you can do and can't do. And they're going to, come up with anything they want. Basically, you've got the government involved in regulating the profession, and they're going to do what they do.
Well, there's expected, scope of practice that you'll learn in your training, but then you get the government saying you can't touch her on her shoulders, but you can touch her on her arms or something weird like that. And you're like, come on, something like that. I don't know. So, but how long do trainings usually last, and what type of experience?
How long do
trainings? Yeah. Like, how hard is it to get into this career?
So, I mean, compared to many careers, I think it's a fairly quick. It can be fairly quick, depending. I mean, I've seen people take over, from a year to even 2 years to finish like a certification process. I personally, I have recently through Lifespan Doulas, my company, have really streamlined the certification process so people can do it pretty quickly. And a lot of the motive for that was the COVID crisis, and basically a lot of hospitals saying, at least in our area and many other areas, that unless you're certified, your doula can't come in. They can only have one support person, but they could have a doula if the doula is certified. So certification all of a sudden took on more value.
I have to laugh because in Utah they were doing that. They tried to do that to us too, and there's no certifying body that agrees on anything. So people were dubbing each other, like a friend would certify their other friend, because it's so ridiculous. Because a trained doula, is the same as a certified doula. The only thing is the certified doula pays some money towards an agency, or an education body to be, and has a certain number of births under her belt and education, but that's it. That's it.
So what I did was at the end of April this year, I dropped an affiliation. I'd been a DONA international trainer for almost 20 years. I dropped that affiliation because their process is very involved. Many people, a lot of hoops to jump through, a lot of extra fees after the training. You have to get to 3 births, which is a total catch-22 here in COVID. And it was impossible for people to get certified, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but it was always difficult. And I was, always having feedback that many people took the training, they thought they wanted that certification, but the reality is they didn't pursue it after training because it was too ridiculous. So I've made a very streamlined thing. I offered it free to everybody who had trained with me in the past as a kind of gift and to help them get to births during COVID, and have had an amazing response to it. And basically they take an exam online and they read a couple books. They show that they've had some type of professional training, and I certify them.
Mm-hmm.
So I've had people do this very quickly now, and people who hadn't trained with me, I charged $100 for it, just because it is my time to do that. But then we give them a directory listing and we try to build some other value into it for them. And then they're certified, and it's a lifetime certification, no fees, no hoops, no ongoing anything.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just so done with all of that. It's just a way to line the pockets of the certification of the training organizations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's just a passive income stream for them, honestly, is what it is the marketing language. It's my passive income stream, and this many people will have to keep coming back and giving me money. So I don't know, I can make a decent living without that. So I don't really.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay. So once you get trained, then how do you overcome the aversion to selling yourself? Because a lot of women, they come into this career because they're passionate. Somebody who's willing to wake up at 3 a.m. on the dime and drive across the state, that is passion and dedication. So it's not a lack of that, or a lack of training, or a lack of education, but a lot of people have an aversion to selling themselves. It feels weird to sell their passion.
Yeah. And I think for me, a lot of it is reframing. So the first thing to reframe is that somehow there's this dichotomy that if you love the work and you would so much that you would do it for free, and you'd even be willing to volunteer because you just love it so much, that somehow if you love it, then it's not worth anything, in terms of monetary value. Like that there's some completely essentially incompatible component to loving it and getting paid really well for it. So I think that's a belief system that people unconsciously often have embraced. Like there's just part of their whole, like, work has to be hard. Do you have a lifelong belief that work sucks?
That's a really good point. So just to rephrase what you said, if you believe that you're passionate and that this is your passion, that it's somehow non-valuable because work should suck.
Yeah, that if you love it, and people have that belief without ever examining it. They don't really know it's operative in their life. But if they thought about their relationship to money and work and what they believed about it, they would realize they already have like a major obstacle to being successful as an entrepreneur, because they think that those two things are essentially incompatible. So you need to reprogram that for sure.
I love it.
Right? You need to embrace the idea that the trick of a life well lived is to find what you should be doing in your life where you can bring value to other people and enjoy to yourself and get paid for it at the same time, because otherwise you don't have the energy left over at the end of the day to do a good job for the thing that you're passionate
exactly
about.
And then that leads to burnout, which is my next question. What is burnout? What does it look like for doulas? What can prevent it?
Okay.
How do you know you're experiencing it?
Can I circle back?
Of course.
Okay. So there's one other thing that I think helps with, that helped me with embrace selling myself.
Oh yeah. Sorry.
Getting over that.
Super excited to talk about burnout.
No, and I'm fine. We'll go there in a minute. But yeah, the aversion to selling oneself. So I reframed it, and I decided to start taking some marketing, giving myself a marketing education, because after I'd been in business for like almost 30 years, I mean, the internet came in, a lot
Mhm.
of changes happened in the society and people having websites. And so I just was like, I'm really out of date here. I need to update how I think about all of this. And so I started taking different trainings and listening to podcasts and things like that, and just really actively pursuing marketing education, how to market yourself. And I began to understand it better. And then I realized, like, I really didn't have a problem with it, because I reframed the idea of selling myself as, in terms of thinking about, what value do I bring to people? What is the value of what I offer? And do I believe in it? Do I believe that there's value of this thing, that there is actual value, for people who come take my doula training or read my book? Like, do I believe in what I'm doing? And then if you believe in what you're doing, whatever it is, whatever you're selling, if you feel it's a good product, if the product is you and your birth doula services, and you believe that that brings value to family, then you just, instead of thinking about selling yourself, you think of the real marketing message is the value you can bring. Like, how do you help families? What problems do they have that you're solving, or that you're
Mhm.
going to help them anticipate and be proactive about? And they don't even know to ask that question right now. They don't even know that what they don't know. Nobody knows what they don't know.
Right. No, yeah.
So, so you, so you focus on that, and it takes that focus off of yourself. And as a good doula, we stay focused on our clients anyway. So what is the value you can bring them, and
Mhm.
communicate that. And since you're passionate about being a birth doula, you can do that, and you are selling the service without thinking about, like, talking about yourself.
Yeah. Brilliant. Cool, cool.
Okay.
Yeah, and then also you just stay truthful to what you are there for the first place. It's not about
Yeah.
trying to coerce anyone into hiring you or anything. It's about staying
No.
truthful.
Just about, here's the value of this thing, and here's how I can help. And, you know, um, let's explore whether or not what I offer is a good match for your needs. Is this what you were hoping for? Or what are you guys looking for?
Yeah.
And, and you just sort of started out. But if you don't feel like you have to pretend to be something you're not, or be more experienced than you are, or, you're not a pretender, but you focus on your positive and what
Hmm.
you do bring, what you do feel strongly about, and people will, they'll sort the
And they'll see
customers,
that. Yeah.
they'll
Customers are
sort
smart.
themselves out. Huh?
Yeah. Customers are smart.
Yeah. Yeah. They'll in their gut, they might end up in the bottom end of it, is going with their gut. Or they go with a strong recommendation or referral from a friend. So that's another thing, is just, focusing on doing your best for each family that you work for. And then if you do that, and they're happy with your services, then they're going to say good things about you, and you'll get referrals from that. So that will help. That's one way of marketing, is just being really good at what you do.
Yeah. Well, and also speak to the underselling. What does that do in the client's mind when they actually place more value on your services than you do, and you're kind of underselling? What does that kind of?
Well, it undermines confidence in you, in your
Mhm.
capacities. And it's like, if you're basically
Like,
expressing
I've attended 200 births. I've been a doula for 10 years and my rate's 200. And they're like,
yeah.
how do you do
Oh,
that?
right. Or people say, well, my fee for birth doula services, I charge $1,200 for a package of services. And then somewhere in the next few sentence or two, they use the word but. So,
Yeah.
they, and basically what it does is introduces does, like, but I don't really charge $1,200. Like, it's, how much do you want to pay? Like, it's like, I'm really flexible. What can you afford? And you undermine
Mm.
yourself
Hmm.
by doing that. And it does not inspire confidence in the client at
Nope.
all. It's the
Well,
opposite. It
here's a little
undermines.
trick that I discovered. If you feel like you can't really price where you want to be, but you want to test that out, um, you could do a menu where, yeah, you say you set your price at $2,000, but if you're doing a home birth, it's a $500 discount. And if you took a birth education class, then it's $100 discount. And the way the way I frame it, not that I don't believe I'm worth 2,000, but if you're doing a home birth and you've taken birth education and you have a great midwife, then it's less work on me. I'm not going to get called too early.
Right.
I'm not going to stay too long. And so it actually benefits me. So it's a win-win for everyone. And I found that it helps people frame the value around what I do, even though I'm really fine with less money than 2,000, well, that's in my
Yeah,
areas.
but you
Don't.
can know that in yourself without conveying it necessarily
Yes,
to the client.
exactly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Am I willing to give somebody a discount who can't afford doula training? Yes. I
But
work
then
out.
they feel that they earned like that the discount is part of, if they say, oh, I'm having a home birth and I get a 500, wow, that's so cool. I got a $500 discount. Whereas I was ready to do that anyway, because they were home birth.
Right.
Yeah. Home births are easier to me.
Well, I agree.
Yeah.
And I was always a childbirth educator when I was birth doing. So those two things were always, services I was offering. So yes, if people were my birth doula clients, I would give them a discount on the childbirth classes.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Because it was like, okay, and vice versa. If they were taking my childbirth classes, oftentimes that was a good funnel for people from, by the end of a 6-week series, and we're like, oh, we want Patty at her birth, or we don't want to say goodbye, right?
Yeah,
and,
that's
it's
cute.
the last class, and we don't get to come next week. And we're like, well, I'd be happy to come to your birth.
Yeah.
Hire me for
Great
that.
product, but also maybe that's something you could add as a doula, is some childbirth education. But okay, so what are some of the actual costs of running a doula agency? Or business, sorry, not an agency. That's a big deal. But you don't. What are the things you don't need to have right out of the gate, and what are some things that you really should invest in?
Really good question. So when you said earlier that it was 50% of expenses, in my mind that's high, but it might be that way the first year or in the beginning. A lot of new business owners spend more for startup than they are over time. So like creating the bones of a website and having it designed, like maybe you'll upgrade that every 3 or 4 years, but I mean once you do it, you got it. So I would say that's probably the biggest expense in becoming a doula is the training, is that initial training investment is, usually varying depending on who you go with, but, anywhere from 500 to and above, depending on how many trainings you take and all of that. So people are investing significantly there. But then going forward, I mean, honestly, what I start with, like, there's a category of basically need, required, desire.
Yep.
Need is your car in working order? Can you get to a birth, right? I mean, do you have a reliable way for people to get in touch with you? And if you have children, do you have reliable childcare? I mean, those are the three.
That's it. That's all you need.
That's all you actually need.
You don't even need a website. You don't need business cards.
Right.
You don't need a logo.
What a waste of time and money to spend that, you're stretching a small budget and your car is unreliable. I would focus there, so that's neat thing. Bottom line, what do I have to be able to do this? Right. And then the next thing is like, well, what do you require? Like, you could conceivably be a birth doula without it, but, kind of basic requirements to grow, I would say, would be a website. I would focus on that. But if somebody really doesn't have the money for that, then start saving money, budget for it, figure it out, maybe get a good presence, strong Facebook, or Instagram page thing going, where you have people who can find you through social media. Start doing professional networking and go for it. Like, everybody has to start somewhere. So, if you can come up with a whole list of reasons for not doing something, then, okay, then all right, don't do it. But if you want to say, I'm supposed to do this work, I need to do this work, I want to do it, how can I? And you're just going to persist through whatever challenges. There are ways to still do that.
Good point. Good point.
So then, so the other requirement, I mean, there's really not that much, but there's this whole other kind of list, which is the the stuff that people get distracted by, like an office space. Oh, I have to have an office space for meeting with clients, or I have to have this $100 rebozo, or I got to buy, oh, look at this place has this wonderful birth bag supply thing, and I can get all these massage tools. I mean, you don't need that stuff.
Yeah, that's the want, that's the desire part of the business.
And those can be on a wish list, like, have people give them to you. if you do a volunteer birth and someone says, oh, thank you so much. Is there any, it's like, well, if you'd like to add to my birth bag, I have a list of some things, that I would love
Love
to
it.
have.
Yeah,
Right?
love it.
Yeah. And so you can have that like keep the list, put your desires and your dream things over there. But just realize, like, if you don't start like stretching that dollar to do what you need and require to actually, be successful, then all that stuff is wasted money.
Yeah, it's wasted money. So when you do go to build your website, what are some of the tips you would offer to differentiate yourself from all the other doulas? Because there are a lot of doulas in this world. And that's okay. We need a lot.
We
An
do.
army. We need an army. But how do you find your ideal client? What are the things that you would recommend?
Well, I mean, I feel like you asked a couple different questions here, but
Yeah.
how to differentiate yourself. Don't be afraid to be yourself and let your personality shine through. At one point, and just like, I can't tell you how lame some of the stuff is that I see. So I offered like free listings on my website for anybody. Like, there's a free, like, really basic listing. When I offered that, I was like, here, this is what I need from you. And sometimes people didn't even give me their service area. And then I took the extra step. I'm offering them a free thing. I took the extra step to go and like, okay, well, where is this website? It might have been somebody who took training for me, which is why I would extend myself. I mean, if I didn't even know them, had no relationship, I'd be like, oh,
Right.
whatever, but if it was somebody who trained with me, I'm like, oh, okay, she didn't tell me that. All right, where is she again? And I go on the website and I can't even find what their service area is. Like, people will spend somewhere between 11 and 15 seconds on a website before they leave it, if they don't find what they want on it. That's what we know from Google Analytics. So the longer you can keep somebody on your site, but you've got about 11 seconds to not have them be frustrated on your website. So the front and center, they should be able to see who you are. I want to see a picture of the doula, contact information, service area. Is it a birth doula, postpartum? What are your services? That should be like very easy for someone to see right on your homepage.
Service area. I love it.
Yep. So that's really important. What was your second question, Sarah?
Oh, just how to differentiate yourself from, service area is a big one, but just personality wise, you said, don't be afraid to be yourself.
Yeah, part of that, it can be sort of subtle or not so subtle messaging on your website. So if there's a particular clientele that you want to serve, like you feel particular affinity, perhaps with a particular religious group or cultural group, or disadvantaged population of people, like you can be very specific about that. If you want and again, you could be very specific, or you might have, like, let's say you're a Christian and you really would like to have Christian clients for the most part come to you. Well, then maybe you wear a crucifix in your picture. Like, that's going to give a strong message. Like,
yeah, exactly.
So somebody who does not resonate with that, who's like, oh, no, I don't want that. Right. They're going to bounce off your site and go to somebody else.
Yeah.
And if that's something that you feel like, hey, I really want, these people are my best match, and this is who I want to serve and who I feel called to serve, then fine. They'll find you. And I think also just your face. I mean, why hide the fact if you're maybe a second career person who's coming back to this? I have a lot of women in their who are grandmothers take my doula training. People are saying, it's me time, I'm an empty nester now, or my children are gone, or I found, and for the end of life doula stuff that I'm doing, a lot of people are older that are coming to that, but there's still some young people too. But anyway, I'm just saying, like, embrace it. It's like, yeah, I'm offering my wisdom, my life wisdom to you, so that and you have that picture of the person. So if you're somebody who's like, I'm kind of looking for somebody who's a really hip doula, and if she showed a couple of tattoos in her picture, I'd be fine with that, and I'd know that she was like my type of person, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And you go ahead and
just be honest with who you are. Yeah, just be yourself. Yeah,
be yourself, and don't be afraid to show that. And if your attitude is one of like I think one of the things I enjoyed the most about my doula work and enjoying the training right now is to have really diverse audience there. So I like the age range. I like as all these different viewpoints. And And so then, I would purposely make sure that the language on my website or the pictures I was using on my website reflected that.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yep.
it doesn't have to be a list. I mean, it could be a very overt list of here's what I believe and, here's my, or it could be more subtle. But I think people can read between the lines, and I think they'll, so just don't be afraid to be yourself on your web. Put some personality into it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
Yeah,
have a short
good.
video of yourself on there.
Yeah. Oh, that would be great. Yep. Because they can tell a lot from that video, whether that you're a good match or not.
And if you keep them on the website for at least a minute, Google likes that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So, and
there you go.
what that means is that you'll start to rank. It'll build over time. You'll
Mm-hmm.
start to rank. But if the longer you can keep people on your website, so they're not going to watch probably a 3-minute video, so don't overdo it. But like keeping them on there, it's like, oh, hey, intro, I get to see what this person says. And
Yeah.
yeah.
So, last question, how do you fit it all in? How do you balance, especially on-call life with the raising babies or other things?
Yeah. Very challenging, I think, especially in the beginning, when if you are still paying the groceries with another job.
Yeah.
And you can't quit your day job. And, and this was my situation. I had my typing and editing business that I was doing out of my home. I was doing childbirth education. I had a 1-year-old and a 7-year-old, working husband. But we didn't have very much money. And then I started that particular year I'm thinking of, I went to 30 births that year.
That's a
So
lot
when
of
I look
births.
back on that, Sarah, I'm like, I don't know how I did it.
That
But
is a lot.
but I do remember that became a breaking point where I had to leave the other, I got to a point where I just was like, you know what, I've got 5 years in here, training, getting name recognition, getting my business out there. It's poised for success, but I'm stretched too thin. And so to me, there came a point where there had to be like a leap of faith moment of saying, well, I cannot continue to be this responsible to this many people, like the people who are coming to me for typing and editing. It's like I had to meet their dissertation deadline, for them, that's like a birth.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's really important that I not miss their deadline.
You're just a doula all over the place. You help birth dissertations, you help birth.
I did.
So
So anyway, I think that, at some point, something's got to go. The other thing I did was I just started cutting down on other responsibilities. I mean, I just didn't say, I started cutting out like, okay, if I have to do this and these pieces are not negotiable, then pretty much everything that is, and I don't mean my whole social life. I mean, volunteering at church, being the school mom who volunteers to be, to take the kids on the outing, the chaperoning. So at the beginning of the school year, I would go to my kids' teachers and say, here's my lifestyle. Here's what I do. I'm never going to sign up for any of this stuff. And I want you to know the reason why. And I said, however, I can be a good backup person for you because in the moment I might be able to say yes to it, but I cannot commit to it in ahead of time.
Yeah. So basically setting boundaries and
so if another chaperone can't show up on the day of the trip, and I'm not at a birth, like call me, or someone else can't bring in that, the cookies, like I'll do it if I can. So you call me. Yeah. And then I just gave myself like permission to not feel guilty about that. I didn't guilt myself about it. I didn't let anybody else guilt trip me. I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm okay with this. So carving out that time for yourself, saying no to things, I think having boundaries. And then my other big time management tool is to just really set goals and to have some action steps for those goals. So, and you have to attach a deadline to your goals. You have to put it in a time frame. Now, you might not meet those, and then you can reconfigure it. But to me, that helps make it manageable. So that on Monday morning when I wake up, I'm like, otherwise I just get overwhelmed. Like there's too much. It's still true for me. It's still I still need goals. All these years later. I still need goals and like kind of action steps like, okay, I'm not in the mood for that today. Maybe I'll work on this one over here.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that one involves researching and sitting at my computer. I'm not in the mood for that, but I could go check this thing out online. Or, I could
basically making it work for you and eliminating the guilt surrounding what you do, because what you do is you provide value and you don't have to make excuses to people that you aren't there or whatever, because ultimately you choose what's important to you. And for me, like I tell my clients, I am extremely busy. I run 2 businesses and I have kids and a very awesome husband that I want to spend time with. But so I'm very busy.
Yeah.
But when I come to your birth, I'm 100% present. And I promise you that I'm 100% present. But it does take me during the day 2 hours to get to your birth. Like, you got to give me 2-hour warning, because I've got to get all of the things in a row so that I can come to your birth and be present the whole time. And it goes really well. There's a respect for my time, and there's a, and then people
And you set
needing
up
me
an
outside.
expectation.
Yep. And I just tell my entire team, my employees, hey, I'm headed to a birth, and they know they're on birth mode.
Yep.
Wow. So how do people find more about you and your book and your website and all the amazingness?
Well, thanks, Sarah. Yeah. So my current business is lifespandoulas.com. And the idea is providing doulas for these major transitional events throughout the
I know
life.
we didn't even get to talk about postpartum, and we talked mostly about birth doulas, but postpartum and death.
Right. But I mean, that's okay, because a doula is a doula. So that was part of the thing. I mean, there's certain skill set and a way of being with people, and that doula model of care, the non-judgment, the non-clinical kind of aspect, where you're supporting people through their process, is true whether the process is birth, or getting used to being a new parent and learning to breastfeed your baby, or
transitioning out of here,
transitioning at the end of life, and all the decision and grief and everything that people are navigating at that point. So it's very similar sort of skill set. So anyway, we offer online training, and it's a choice between it's basically self-paced. A lot of it is self-paced. So you asked earlier how long it takes. It depends on how quickly you want to work through 35 hours of online materials and classes. So people who are hot to trot can do it quickly. Other people might just take their time, and their self-paced might be slower, and that's fine too. And then there's a weekend workshop component to the training, where we're live on Zoom and give people a chance to interact and process together some of what they're learning, ask questions, and all of that. So that anyway, those trainings have more information on my website about that. My book is for sale.
Sorry, just about your training, you're all over. So you can take your training all over the world, because you're all online. That is so cool. Not very many trainings are doing that.
And what I'm noticing too is that I am getting calls from all over the world. And for some people, it's like the live component is, in the middle of the night for them. And so, I'm making, by the end of this year, I plan to have 100% self-paced option available for people who want to, just complete that and get the certification. So working on that piece right now. That's my goal. One of the goals I'm working on towards the end of the year.
That's really exciting.
Then
it makes it good, accessible doula training all over the world.
And that's my, that's kind of a theme. I mean, of what I'm doing with the certification too, is to make doulas more accessible, to make it affordable for people to become doulas, and to get certified and to launch these businesses. And that's a huge piece of, I think, what I've always been about, is making, I think all families should be able to benefit from this. And because we're so awesome.
Yeah.
My book is also available on the website. The 2 books, the workbook is kind of an implementation tool for people, like a lot of detail in the Doula Business Guide. The workbook is more like, here, like, do this, and kind of lead you through some different, different pieces of it. And there's also a workshop available. The book is also available on Amazon if people are interested.
Awesome. So say the website just one more time. So
lifespandoulas.com.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much. It has been such a pleasure to talk to you. It's so cool to finally meet someone with this amount of scale in the doula training world, and you have so much experience. It's just, thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Sarah. I appreciate it. The opportunity to share with your audience.
Please visit us at birthcircle.com, join our Facebook groups, or find us on Instagram and Pinterest. We hope you'll use our resources to support your birthing experience.